So this is part A of the KhoodeelaarTV television channel being broadcast only on the internet at 2 minutes to midnight GMT, that is 23:58 hours GMT, from London in the UK within quotation marks. Now, when David Neuberger dishonestly recruited Brexiteer propagandist, was making a false claim about the London court system becoming open to the world and the world's litigation. Shifting to or arriving or appearing or surfacing in London, in fact, in the High Court structure in the Strand in central London. He was referring to this kind of litigation that is reported in the Fleet Street papers today about the daughter of the late Jordanian King Hussein, Princess Haya, being awarded what the daily buying Boris Johnson grab is saying, 554 million divorce payout. This is what Neuberger was referring to or having in mind. And Princess Haya herself has been treated, in the kind of words of the judge, Mr. Justice Moore, MOOR. And he's, according to the daily buying Boris Johnson graph, he presided over the financial settlement. And he said, according to the daily buying Boris Johnson graph, he said that he was astonished by the apparent behavior of the security guards, because the security guards, one of them, had an affair with Princess Haya, and the four of them threatened her with the information being passed on to her husband, the ruler of Dubai, as he is mentioned, named Sheikh Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum. The 47-year-old princess fled from the United Arab Emirates to the United Kingdom in 2019 after her then husband, the ruler of Dubai, discovered she had a relationship with one of the bodyguards hired to protect her. The court papers reveal that 4 security operatives received around £7 million in payments after they threatened to tell the Sheikh about the relationship. The documents, which can be reported on for the first time, which is Wednesday, 22nd of December 2021, do not identify the men who are named only as Mr. A, B, C, and D. However, they are believed to be British. The alleged scandal emerged as Princess Haya was questioned by the Sheikh Mohammed's legal team at the Royal Courts of Justice in London. She said she had been scared by the threats and decided to use money from her daughter's bank account because it was convenient. She added that she planned to pay the money back to her daughter. Those were the funds that I could get to make the payment quickly, which were available to me, she told the court. Mr. Justice Moore, who presided over the financial settlement, said he was astonished by the apparent behavior of the security guards. It sticks in the throat that these people have been able to get away with this and have not been prosecuted, he said. In his judgment, he wrote, I realize I have not heard from the alleged blackmailers, but nobody should be blackmailed, and Her Royal Highness must have been very frightened. He added, these individuals had blackmailed HRH over an affair she had with one of these four people. She accepted that some of the total money spent had come from accounts in the name of the children, and she considers this to be her responsibility. Messrs. B and C were paid a total of £4.5 million, with Mr. A receiving £1.2 million, and Mr. D, with whom she was understood to have had the affair, apparently receiving £1.2 million. The princess took her children, Jalila and Zaid, to the UK, claiming she feared for her life after Sheikh Mohammed discovered the affair. And there is, of course, the picture and the profile on this page of Shackleton, the solicitor and Tory peer who acted for the Prince of Wales and Duke of York in their divorce, was part of Princess Haya's legal team. So this is a piece about the Baroness Shackleton by Gabriella Swelling, social affairs editor. Her piece is also on the top of the page. Not top of the page. She's written online. I think she has written online. Yes, the version of her kind of coverage is online on the Telegram, I think. So the main piece by Steve Bard is headed Princess Haya wins 554 million divorce payment. But this is not really a divorce payment. This is the main amount is distributed. There are kind of breakdowns. How much is paid for what? And Rich Desires breakdown of record Dubai settlement. And the main sum is £251,500,000, which is for continuing security for the princess and their two children, to be paid within 3 months, and the rest of the details are of concerning smaller amounts. Now, Princess Haya is being kind of treated with dignity by the words of the judge, Justice Moore. Here she is pictured with the ex-husband. The Princess Haya is herself the daughter of the former king, King Hussein, who has died. So she is used to the kind of opulence that the judgment actually refers to as being the norm in Dubai, in the household of the Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum. Now, Al Maktoum has been involved in the serial kind of abduction and imprisonment of more than one of his children, both females in their 30s. And according to reports, he has got more than 30 children with several women. The point about our referring to David Neuberger, who was the president of the Supreme Court in July 2017, when then de facto deputy prime minister in the regime fronted by Theresa May, David Lidington, was in post as the so-called Justice Secretary in Theresa May's cabinet. And although, according to most reports, both Lidington and Theresa May were supporters of the UK remaining in the European Union, once Theresa May got involved as the incumbent, became incumbent as prime minister following the dirty, dodging David Dodger Cameron resigned. She, Theresa May, and her cabal became kind of converted to the cause of Brexit. And it was in promoting that cause, that agenda, on her behalf, that David Lidington, in post as the Justice Secretary, kind of procured, in a prostitution way, procured the service of David Neuberger, who was just about to retire as the first president of the so-called Supreme Court, when in July he addressed a very small gathering of Australian so-called lawyers, in front of whom Neuberger had been tasked to deliver a promotion for Brexit and its benefits. So Neuberger said that once Brexit was, to put it in that kind of phrase, was done, London would become the center of litigation. And we keep reading from this because this is very important in the context of our narrative and our work and the diagnosis of Fleet Street. This is what we have been quoting for months about Neuberger, dishonestly extolling the virtues of Brexit. So David Neuberger is spelled, it's a German spelling, Neuberger. So Neuberger said, so this is the piece that So on the 4th of July, the Evening Standard website posted 4th of July 2017. It had this: Brexit could boost London's status as world's legal center. That's the actual word, literal words, and it is. And then it says Brexit could boost London's status as world's legal center, comma, Britain's top judge Neuberger was still in post as the Supreme Court president. And the byline is by Martin Bentham. Bentham is a spy. I mean, he's too compromised to be considered as a journalist, but he is the Home Affairs editor of the Evening Standard. And Bentham is a liar, and so was Neuberger. Because Neuberger said, Lord Neuberger, the president of the Supreme Court, said that once British judges were left to our own common law devices, that is an absolute lie and a stupidity, they would be able to react more quickly and freely to developments in our fast changing world. Now, the only development of the type that Neuberger was salivating about is the kind of litigation that we have been talking about in relation to Princess Haya and her former husband, the so-called ruler of Dubai, the very heavily condemned abuser of children, abuser of family, and abuser of the wealth. Now, Neuberger was lying because he was saying to the Australian gathering that Labour Party's 1999 Access to Justice Act was the root of the problem he set out. And he said, we have a serious problem with access to justice for ordinary citizens and small and medium-sized businesses. If it does not exist, society will eventually start to fragment. Now, by it, Neuberger dishonestly was referring to access to justice. Now, there are two things wrong, factually wrong, about his kind of reference to the Labour Party passing the Access to Justice Act. It was not a really Access to Justice Act. It was a continuation of the denial of access to justice. But the act was passed during the Tony Blair-fronted period, quote, Labour in the sense of Sharma, because there had been a report by the former Lord Chief Justice Wolf, so-called Wolf report. Wolf was as dishonest in his concept of the understanding of access to justice as has been David Neuberger. And all the judges, all the sitting judges in the so-called judiciary, in the senior posts or senior ranked posts, are as corrupt, as dishonest as the ones that are sitting and the ones that do sit in the lower kind of courts. And the words used by Justice Moore promoting and praising Princess Haya, we distinguish the two things. One is that Princess Haya is entitled to be treated with respect and referred to decently. We are not questioning her entitlement, but we are questioning the absence of such words of praise and deference used by Mr. Justice more about her. Absence of that about other people. That's what we are saying. And we are condemning David Neuberger for making that stupid statement that Access to Justice Act was a problem. Access to justice, the piece of legislation, is one of many. And our common law devices, the phrase that Neuberger used in his July 2017 kind of appearance before this small group of Australian, mainly lawyers or law practitioners in London in July 2017. Our common law device is a complete confection. Because no matter what there is or there is suggested to be about common law devices, the actual delivery, the actual kind of ruling, the actual conclusion, the actual decision by any number of courts, any number of judges, depends on the outlook, the attitude, the mentality of those individual judges. And as I said, on the evidence, on the records, on the contents of the rulings, the mainly little English judiciary is absolutely racist, absolutely corrupt, and absolutely historically, undeniably, brazenly obstructive of access to even ordinary people, even ordinary little Englanders. That is to say, those people who are easily kind of brainwashed and kind of manipulated, hoodwinked, and misled and misinformed, and brainwashed into a zombie state where they accept the propaganda of the judiciary of the Fleet Street. And there is nothing in the Fleet Street coverage of the ruling in favor of Princess Haya that says that ordinary people are being denied access to justice. So this Castlewood House is actually a legacy by her father, King Hussein of Jordan, who left the property to his daughter. And as I said, the kind of access to the services of the courts in England, in London, that are available to the likes of Princess Haya, not exclusively, but the likes of her in terms of the money that she can pay to the licensed law traders. That is not something that Neuberger even imagined, because Neuberger, in his mentality, inhabited some other planet. He didn't belong to the planet Earth, and he most certainly didn't think of the many that he assumed didn't deserve access to justice in any case. Because he said that if access to justice is not realized, then society would fragment. That's a lie. Because society has not been recognized as an integrated entity, as an entity that actually allows equality to all the residents, all the electors, all the citizens, all the potential litigants, all the potential complainants that should seek unfettered, unobstructed access to justice to any tier of the court system, the court bureaucracy. And there is nothing in the Fleet Street papers, nothing in the Telegraph, nothing in the Guardian, nothing even in the Financial Crimes or in other papers that actually examines the disparity, the deadly disparity between the access that is actually available to people with huge sums of money to pay to the licensed law traders and people who haven't got the money. Now, the Access to Justice Act itself was in fact one that reduced the access that had prevailed or had been notionally available prior to Wolf report. And what was available was the legal aid, access to legal aid, not to the litigants, but abusively referred to or ascribed to the litigants. And the litigants are litigants in low income who were entitled to seek redress or remedies via the use of the licensed law traders who were the actual recipients of the legal aid money, not the litigants themselves. So Wolf was wrong. Neuberger has been wrong. And the status quo prior to the Wolf report and the Access to Justice Act was wrong. And both the Bar Council and the Inns of Court and the Law Society of England and so-called Wales, these are all criminally complicit in their silence about the inbuilt injustice of the permanent denial of access to remedies in the legal system that applies to the many. Most of the people are denied access under various excuses and the various pretexts and various bureaucratic additional obstacles created by the Access to Justice Act only reinforce the narrative, the agenda, that there is no citizenship in this country, that there is no right to access to justice in the UK. And Neuberger was lying through his teeth. And Neuberger would lie because he had been playing a prostitute role. He was not playing an ethical, moral role when he was peddling the Brexiteering line at the behest of David Lidington, who was serving the agenda of the career of Theresa May at that time. Mr. Justice Moore, not Theresa Moore, it's Mr. Justice Moore was the one who is featured in the news report, so-called. His full name is Mr. Justice Philip Moore, who presided over the financial settlement in the family courts in London, also ordered the Sheikh, who is the Prime Minister of Dubai and owner of Godolphin Stables, to set up a 3 million education fund for the children. The total settlement made public after the, it is being claimed by the Daily, bribing Boris Graf, that made public after the Daily buying the Boris Johnson Graf and other media outlets won the right to report the case, comes to around 554 million, 900 million pounds less than the princess had sought. It exceeds the 450 million given in 2017 to Tatiana Akhmedova, the former wife of the Russian billionaire Farhad Akhmedov. Now, Farhad Akhmedov is a derived name from the Muslim origin. So Farhad Akhmedov is technically a Muslim from a Russian state. Princess Haya, 47, became the Sheikh's second wife after they married in April 2004. However, he divorced her in 2019 when he found out about the affair. The 65-page judgment says the deal is designed to secure a clean break in the hope of bringing an end to one of the most acrimonious divorces played out in the English courts. Now, this is the whole point. Acrimonious cases involving mainly people, not ordinary resident people in this country. And like the oil wealth and other Middle Eastern goodies, the otherwise anti-Muslim crusaders have no qualms about receiving the fees and the money through these litigations. And when any Muslim, ordinary Muslim living in this country, or ordinary person of African or Asian background, origin, descent, has got legitimate, objectively defined, legitimate cause to seek the intervention and the role of the courts, they are discriminated against without any hesitation by the entirety of the court system. And as we have been saying, we shall talk about the contextual cost of such denial. Our movement has been completely vindicated by other rulings, vindicated about the obstructions that our own movement and various campaigns have been caused by the various courts, various tiers over the years, over the decades. And as I said, I have been an active advocate for a very long time, much longer than the entire length of David Neuberger's kind of adulthood, if you like. Because Neuberger is many years younger to me, as is Baroness Hale, who succeeded him, as is the Baroness Shackleton, as is this man Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum. So there is a myth about the UK judicial system, judiciary. And the myth is being reinforced from time to time by criminals like Dominic Raab. Dominic Raab is mentally incapable of understanding basic things like the geography. And yet he has been imposed as Secretary of State for Justice. I mean, it's embarrassing. So what can you expect? What can ordinary people expect by way of seeking remedies? There is no justice, but at least judicial remedies can be expected from somebody who is in denial, who is lying through his teeth, which goes to kind of reinforce our factual basis for saying that there is no decent, there is no live society at the present time. Boris Johnson fronts the cabal of darkness, evil doing cabal. And we have detailed before, not in tonight's edition, or this edition, this current edition, because it is crossing from one date to the other. We are dated, this edition is dated the Wednesday, the 22nd of December 2021. But we are now already into Thursday, the 23rd of December 2021. And this is coming only on the internet. It's midnight 34 GMT, that is 0034 hours GMT into Thursday, the 23rd of December 2021. Now, there is nothing in the judgment that has been now reported by the papers, both the Guardian, the Daily Buying, Boris Johnson Grab, Financial Times. None of them says what we are discussing. That is to say, the claim that David Neuberger made in not his first part, the second part, the part that he actually blamed the 1999, I think, Access to Justice Act that was enacted during Tony Blair's frontage in the first term of the liar, Tony Blair. But regardless of who was the incumbent in the post of Prime Minister, the contents are not really attributable to the particular regime. And as Keir Starmer has been exhibiting, or as the exhibit Keir Starmer has been factually being connected with, it doesn't matter. It makes no difference whether the incumbent leader of the Labour Party is called the Labour Party leader or they're called the Conservative Party leader. The ideology between Johnson and Starmer is the same ideology. And there is no concept of universal rule of law, universal rights, universal due process. And as we have been saying, the UK remains actively signed up to literally hundreds of international instruments, that is to say, agreements, charters, conventions, declarations, including the human rights ones, that Dominic Raab and his likes are absolutely hostile to. Not because he understands the implications, he understands the meanings, or he recognizes the existence of a society. Anyone who rails against that is constantly criticizes and condemns the phrase human rights must be very ignorant indeed, because human rights as a phrase, as a kind of concept, are already very limited in any case. And the Human Rights Convention that has the word European before it, the convention is a direct product, consequence of the existence of the United Nations organization. And the European Union transformed into European Union from being the European Economic Community or the common market, mainly because each state, including the United Kingdom, France, Germany, to mention the bigger ones, was feeling the pressure against its own existence, the threat of disintegration from the failure to provide basic set of remedies, basic set of values to the people resident and living in this within its borders. So it was their own necessity that propelled them or forced them to enact various acts of parliament or statutes in their own territories that conformed partly to the United Nations founding declarations. So they were not doing any charity, they were not doing any favors to people that didn't deserve anything. The narrative in the Daily Mail, for example, the Daily Scum and the Daily Buying Boris Johnson Grab, and the daily Beaverbrook Poison, the Daily Express, the narrative about human rights is one of hostility. And it makes some unidentifiable alien creatures the beneficiaries of what belongs to the Little Englanders. That's the narrative, that's the line. But that's not the case. Most of the rights, most of the remedies included in the human rights legislations and treaties and agreements are about the UK state, for example, or the signatory state owing duties to its own citizens or residents or electors or members of the society, if society exists. Remember Thatcher? There is no such thing as society. So the likes of Dominic Raab, the likes of the corrupt Liz Truss, they appease the most backward parts of the population when they say they, like Liz Truss or Dominic Raab, or even Theresa May when she was Prime Minister, that they want to scrap the Human Rights Act. What do they mean? By pandering to the racists and the fascists in the population, by saying that they will scrap the Human Rights Act, they conform to these fascists and racists for their careers. So they either beat off threats to their leadership or they delay threats to the leadership. And it goes on. And while that is going on within the Conservatives, the Labour Party is dead politically. Starmer is dead anyway. I mean, Starmer looks dead. He spews in a way that suggests that he's dead. And there is nothing else in the Labour Party, even including the very irregular interventions by the likes of Angela Rayner. There is nothing of substance that actually matches, the demanded amount and weight of opposition that the Conservatives must be facing. But they don't face that opposition. Remember that vote? 100 Conservative MPs, so-called rebels, gave Johnson the nightmare. Not the Keir Starmer fronted Labour Party, because he followed like a slave the narrative, the agenda, the purpose, the need for Johnson to get his support, and he got it. So you kind of translate this kind of lack of equation, lack of action into the House of Commons, into the judiciary, and in society, in the media, mainly the media, which we are discussing, diagnosing. And if I know life in the media has no life. And the Financial Times, which costs today £2.90, has got this item: Dubai divorce, princess wins 554 million award. And the first paragraph says, Princess Haya bint Al Hussein, that is her father's name, bint meaning daughter, Al Hussein is King Hussein of Jordan, the strange wife of Dubai's ruler, has secured more than £500 million in what is thought to be the largest post-divorce financial settlement awarded by an English court. Now, that is completely false because the main spur, the actual encouragement, the actual force that propelled the judge and the judiciary and the whole legal kind of stunt was linked with the violence that the ruler poses to her security and the security of her two children. And the maximum amount in that sum is about the security of the children. So the financial crimes which cost £2.90, which is 5-6 times the price of the Daily Mail and the Sun or Scum on the Mirror. The Mirror's price is 90 pence. So it's more than 3 times the price of the Daily Mirror. And what is the price of the Daily Mail is 80 pence. There is more than 3 times the price of the Daily Mail. So the Financial Times, which we call the financial crimes because of its stupidity, is not worth the money, but we have to spend the money in order to get the records straight, get the facts and the reference. So it says that is the divorce. It's not the divorce, it's the threat that he poses to the children and to the Princess Haya. So it's not divorce payment. Divorce payment included, but that's not the divorce sum. So it should be made clear by the financial crimes, which doesn't make it clear. And there is a piece in the financial crimes there is a bigger piece inside, which is it's not the divorce payment because the list is 277. But this is the piece that contradicts the front page first paragraph. This piece by Jane Croft, reporting from London, reads less inaccurate, let's say. Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, the billionaire ruler of Dubai, must pay about 554 million in child maintenance and security costs to his former wife, Princess Haya, and their two children, in what is believed to be the biggest post-divorce financial settlement awarded by an English court. Now that is less inaccurate, let's say. And a spokesman for the Sheikh said, he has always ensured that his children are provided for. The court has now made its ruling on on finances, and he does not intend to comment further. He asks that the media report respect the privacy of his children and do not intrude into their lives in the UK. Well, the UK media cannot be expected to report nothing about the children in the UK. They will try it. So this Jane Croft piece does admit the biggest item in the maintenance award is for the cost of providing security for Princess Haya and her children, which is what I have said at the beginning. Sir Andrew MacFarlane, president of the Family Division of the High Court, previously found that Sheikh Mohammed constitutes a grave risk to the security of the princess and the children. Most importantly, in this regard, and absolutely uniquely, the main threat the children and Princess Haya face is from His Highness himself, not from outside sources. The judge said in the ruling, adding this was compounded by the full weight of the state that he has available to him. Sheikh Mohammed said in a position statement cited in the ruling that he had no intention of causing harm to Princess Haya, had no hacked material in his possession, and there was no surveillance undertaken with his express or implied authority. In October, he contested the court's hacking ruling, stating it was based on incomplete evidence. The ruling shines a light on the family's spending. Details of Princess Haya's 35.64 million of expenditure from December 2009 to September 2021 was shown to the court, including 397,421 pounds spent on UK holidays in 2021, plus 77,770 pounds on holiday security. The family's holiday costs in Italy, in a hotel in Italy, one summer were 631,000 pounds plus 180,000 pounds in flight costs. A further 274,000 pounds was spent at a hotel in Greece plus 210,000 pounds flight costs. The maintenance award allots the children a 5 million annual budget for 7 holidays over 9 weeks. 7 holidays over 9 weeks, including 1.8 million for private plane flights. The judge has allowed 1 million pounds a year for leisure costs and 277,050 pounds a year for the upkeep of the children's animals. The children's animals have been given £277,050 a year for the upkeep of the children's animals. It's more than £250,000 for the upkeep of the animals. So they've got on Financial Times on the page 3, 6 potential successors for position if Johnson falls. Johnson's approval ratings have plummeted, and MPs want to see an improvement by the May local polls, or he could be in trouble. We have not seen how much Fiona Shackleton has been paid, but she must be receiving millions of pounds from Princess Haya. There is a piece about immigration against the odds, migrants in business, and it says that FT seasonal appeal, despite obstacles including a lack of knowledge of the UK's civil and financial systems and difficulty accessing capital, new arrivals have a record of entrepreneurship. So that's the big read that the Financial Times is kind of running on the positive side of migrants proving to be big entrepreneurs. And the main picture of the woman they have got in the center of the piece is named Razan Al-Sus, who fled Syria in 2012 for the UK, where she set up a business making award-winning Balumi cheese. Not all immigrants are as successful, and despite having qualifications, many end up in low-skilled, low-pay jobs above left, while opportunities for learning English above right are more limited after funds cut. Now, this piece is obviously a financial crimes piece, so it's not going to be complete or truthful, and it's most certainly not going to deal with the built-in racism and anti-Muslim hatred. So they've got a token piece about the people put in a limbo. But before we get to that limbo piece, let's look at the reference to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. An OECD report published this year found the nature of immigrant entrepreneurship is also beginning to change as the skills levels of new arrivals have risen. The share of immigrants with a tertiary education has increased in nearly all EU member states and the OECD countries between 2006 and 2017. There have been slight increases in the share of self-employed immigrants working in education and service sectors over the past decade, while the shares in agriculture and accommodation and food services have declined. Now, with the exception of this person who fled Syria in 2012, with that exception, most of the references to asylum seekers, migrants, refugees in Fleet Street, including the financial crimes, are kind of generalized references. They're not actual case studies, they're not actual reports from the ground. And no matter how, one-off way, how sympathetic these commissioning of these pieces and running of these pieces may be, most of the people, like this one, Sarah O'Connor, doesn't sound like a Syrian herself. Most of the writers, in fact, all the writers and all the editors in the Fleet Street papers who write about migrants, about asylum seekers and refugees, and even those ones who are quoted, apart from this Syrian person, are mainly European origin or not African or not Asian origin. And this big piece is full of overhyped stress on the fluency and knowledge of the English language. English language is referred to, used by racists as a kind of general hammer with which to hit targets of the racism. So, for example, Peter Goals, a notorious racist conservative on the Tower Hamlets Council in London, Peter Goals, has more than once shouted at people in the council, Tower Hamlets Council chamber, speak English or speak in English. Now, Goals is not very clever, but pitted against the very dead opposition, even Peter Goals comes across as almost clever. When I was walking from the direction from Fleet Street, from Brick Lane, when I was walking from Brick Lane in July 2015, and I was walking towards the main road that connects the side roads to Whitechapel, I noticed that the UK's worst racist and anti-Muslim, Katie Hopkins, was standing next to Peter Goals in a street called Dale Street. Dale Street is off the Hanbury Street, which is itself off the Brick Lane. So as soon as Gold saw me, Hopkins had never met me or seen me, so Golds had met me many times, not directly to talk, but had been in the same vicinity many times. So he knew me in terms of my opposition to his politics and his behavior and his racism. As soon as Peter Gold saw me in the Deal Street, he ran towards a parked car, towards a sitting car, yards from where he was. And Katie Hopkins followed him. Obviously, he must have whispered to her loudly enough to scamper, to actually escape. He must have given her the worst possible description about me. And the two of them ran like they were running for the Olympic Games, and they got into the car. And Deal Street, anyone who is familiar with the map of the area would know the Deal Street is a side street. It's not a long street. And it had to take the turn right towards the Valence Road in order to get away. And it could have crashed if not careful, if the driver was driving with any lack of care. So they rushed out of sight and out of the area in order to avoid being seen by me. The liar Peter Golds is on the record as having said that he met Nelson Mandela more than once. No mathematics, no arithmetic, no nothing, given his racism and racist life, could justify that. And not only that, Nelson Mandela had met him more than once, he also claimed in a spiel delivered at the Tower Hamlets Council that Nelson Mandela said, intimated to him, spoke privately to him or exclusively to him. Nelson Mandela on the one hand, and shielding Katie Hopkins on the other. How can one same person do that? And nobody knows anything about Peter Goulds being a superman. How does he do that? To reconcile Nelson Mandela and Katie Hopkins, one in the same person. So Peter Goulds scuttled away, and he is the one that is on the record as having shouted more than once, English, speak in English. Now there are people who have been speaking in English to racists for hundreds of years. Of course, among the English speakers must be included M.K. Gandhi, Mohanlal Karamchand Gandhi, not Mahatma Gandhi. His name is Mohanlal Karamchand Gandhi. So the M.K. Gandhi, who stayed very briefly at an address in Tower Hamlets in Bow, was treated as second or third class by the British imperialists in South Africa. And he spoke in English. That is the point. And he was a licensed barrister. So to get the license, he had to have proficiency in English. But that license to practice as a barrister didn't shield him, didn't protect him from being abused by the English imperialists. And the behavior of the Tar Hamlets Council is racist. Behavior of the Tar Hamlets community housing is racist. The behavior of the Poplar Harka is racist. The behavior of the individual county court, the individual county court judges and judiciary, the behavior of the tribunals, all of them are racist, despite the fact that evidence that they actually opposed had been put to them in nothing but in English language, in comprehensible, understandable English language. So the financial crime doesn't talk about that. This piece refers to English language proficiency many times. And it doesn't, the headline says the act against the odds, migrants in business. It doesn't talk about the odds in the judiciary, odds in the police, odds in parliament, odds in the government departments, and most certainly not odds in the newspapers. Because the newspapers, including the financial crimes, do not run factual, fact-based investigative pieces, contemporary pieces, contemporaneous pieces about what is going on. What is going on in the obstruction put in the way against migrants, against refugees, and how the obstructions are put against migrants and refugees by actively, brazenly, contemptuously denying the obligations that the UK has according to the various treaties, various declarations, conventions that the UK remains signed up to. And the Justice Minister, so-called, Dominic Raab, I mean, every single act, every single decision that Dominic Raab makes in the post of Justice Minister, so-called, constitutes and contains evidence under which he can be and should be and needs to be prosecuted. If there were due process of law, due process of the prosecution service in this country in place, in action. There is not. And the odds that the migrants allegedly face in business, this piece, FT seasonal appeal, despite obstacles including a lack of knowledge of the UK civil and financial system, is an absolute lie. Because this is an extension of the lie about lack of English language skills. This headline in the Times, in the daily buying Boris Johnson graph, going back to the question of the ruling in the High Court against Sheikh Muhammad bin Rashid Al Maktoum. This headline is wrong as well, factually wrong. It says Princess Haya wins £554 million divorce payout. It's post-divorce ruling. And she applied for 900 million more than what she has been given. If the evidence of his abduction, kidnap, and imprisonment of the other children is a guide, then Princess Haya would be very wise never to allow these two children to visit Dubai at all. This is something that she must know, she must do. She must never allow these two children to visit Dubai or any other country. We shall be continuing to talk about the legal myths and the corruption of the English court system that is restricted to those with extremely deep pockets, either side. And that proves that David Neuberger was callous, ignorant, and dishonest. There is nothing in Neuberger's statement or in Neuberger's record that shows that he cares about the ordinary citizens. Now, there is a correction to make on the Financial Times crimes piece about India. It's not Henry Sender, it's Henny Sender. The name of the person writing the market's insight about India on page 16 is Henny, Henny Sender, not Henry Sender. Because that was an actual error in reading the name. Now, the Henny Center is a managing director at BlackRock. Look up BlackRock if you want to. And again, this piece in the Financial Crimes about India is shallow. It says, the headline says, the India's buoyant economy disguises vulnerabilities. That is for the outer planet. The corruption is not there, and the fascism is not there, and the violence is not there. So there is this Samiran Chakraborty of the Citigroup, India, is quoted as saying, about 40% of Indians can't afford a packet of biscuits, let alone a two-wheeled vehicle. Now that's Henny Center. And that's the highlight. And she has also quoted this Samiran Chakraborty as follows. If liquidity drops, everything goes down. No, not Samiran. This is somebody else. She's talking about Samiran Chakraborty, and it's a paraphrase by her. 20% of Indians, or about 250 million people, are doing just fine. They live in the formal economy, have secure incomes and jobs, and aspire to buy electric vehicles. But the remainder, it is Henny Sanders paraphrasing, but the remainder inhabit the more precarious world of the informal economy, where job losses, declining income, and reduced consumption in the wake of the pandemic are far more prevalent. And that's where his direct quotation comes. Samiran Chakraborty. About 40% of Indians can't afford to even buy a packet of biscuits, said Chakraborty, let alone a two-wheeled vehicle. Now that's the kind of reality that the financial crime should be reporting on every single edition, but it doesn't. And by not doing that, the financial crimes become the financial crimes. Hiding and concealing and denying crimes that are committed to 1 billion people in India, more than 1 billion. And extrapolate that lack of equality and access and cover the judiciary, cover the police, the public life, the transport, the jobs market, the housing market, and you find 1 billion people being denied basic rights and basic access to society or social amenities. So this is the Khoodeelaar campaign television channel carrying out world exclusive diagnosis of the media. And that is the Fleet Street media that we have been looking at, the financial crimes and the daily buying Boris Johnson graph. And we shall be talking more about all of these and other issues in the next editions. This is probably just over 1.5 hours, but it could be just an approximate statement.